Hello, everyone. Welcome to News Now, the Belmont Journal's daily update on what's going on in the community of Belmont. I'm your host, Roger Colton. I have with me today Franklin Tucker, who is the editor and publisher of the Belmontonian, Belmont's online source for hyperlocal news. Franklin, the big news this week is that we have some numbers that are being associated with the override this spring. Can you tell
That's
us about it?
that's right. There was a one of those mass meetings we had. It was between the select board, the financial task force, the school committee. I believe the warrant committee also was there. So they had a lot of members there, and basically it's been the culmination of about almost a year's work, really, if you want to think about it. But if you want to just look at it's been about a year's worth of work in which the financial task force has made an interesting model to decide, and then this again is part of what is happening in Belmont, and that is how to resolve the looming budget deficit that we have every year, it seems. And everybody agrees that there's going to be an override, and then now they came out with a number after going through a lot of revision, things like that. Back in August, the town decided that, the select board decided that the town was going to have an override, and it was going to be about $12.5 million at the time. Well, I think everybody realized that number wasn't going to pass anywhere. That number was not going to pass. So what they did is they were very creative and used a lot of free cash. As you know, well, maybe if you don't know, free cash. There's a substantial amount of free cash this year because of all the money that was brought back to the town, and the town got because of COVID. COVID seemed, did a lot of horrible things, but what it did for Belmont was it really surged free cash into $11 million. So just to be very quick about it, there's going to be a lot of use of free cash for the next 3 years. That will be about $4.7 million each year that free cash will be used to stabilize the budget. And what the and through a lot of work and through a lot of detail, the financial task force has discovered that over the next 3 years we'll have about $8.3 million deficit, and so they will be using a lot of free cash. And what they will need to fill in the gap in an override is $6.4 million.
A year.
No, just over the 3 years.
Okay.
So basically they cut the ask in half, and they will go forward before town residents and basically they'll say, look, we don't want to destroy the schools, we don't want to destroy the town. It's a $6.4 million. It's not 12.5. Let's make this a deal. Of course, being Belmont, the select board went up to the edge of the water and they said, well, let's wait till next week to really approve this because one member of the select board wanted to do a little bit more deep dive. That would be Roy Epstein. He believes that the numbers can be even squished. It can be reduced even more. It doesn't appear that actually is going to work. I mean, he was looking at. He was asking questions about the schools. Do the schools really need the over 30 new positions over 3 years? That was that issue was taken up by
The superintendent.
The superintendent. I was thinking about supers. The superintendent and John Phelan, and he made it quite blunt and quite clear that was a number that has to be the 30 over 3 years, and that has to do with opening a seventh school, and that will be the new middle school. So there is going to be need for a number of people. One thing that Belmont doesn't have that other school districts have is a high school social worker, and people were stunned when they found that out. So all the work has been done. I think the select board, they agree that there will need to be an override. They've got the number, but we decided to wait a week.
And there
Classic Belmont. So let's wait
there
one more
really
week.
are two things going on here. There's the dollar number, but then there's the number of years as well.
That's right. It's 3 years, and I understand. Roy Epstein, give him credit. Being an economist and does that type of work. He said, "Let's look at 5 years. Why can't we look at 5 years? Because if we look forward more years, basically, we can have a number that maybe we can even squeeze it further." He says, "Look, if you have it every 3 years, you may have large numbers. Everybody's thinking that, oh, it's 6.4. Well, and in 3 years we'll have like another 5 million." He says, that's not the case. We might see costs go up even higher. So let's look further on. Let's see if we can get 5 years. But I understand that the financial task force basically said the estimations cannot be pushed forward so many years, especially when we're in a COVID situation right now.
Sure.
We really can't forecast the fourth, the fifth, the sixth year because the variables are just too much.
And was there any discussion about what that dollar amount translates into for an average homeowner in Belmont?
Yes, it's well, they used numbers that they said that the average home, again, I'm as shocked as you are when you hear this. The average home
Over $1 million?
$1.25 million. One
Yes.
point. Yeah. It's just you just shake your head and you go like, how can anybody afford to live in this town? That will come about $900 extra in your taxes.
Okay, let's close the door on the override. It sounds like we will have more information for folks in the coming weeks. Let's talk about tennis courts. It's not as big a thing, but it
it is.
It generates public interest.
It certainly does. The town had two meetings. There were two meetings. One with the Community Preservation Act, the Community Preservation people, and also the Recreation Department, the commission, and they both were looking at tennis courts. The Rec Commission is going to expand and extend for another year their pilot project in terms of setting aside a court or two for residents, and we will have a reservation system. I know that there was a reservation system back in the late 70s and early 80s, but that kind of just dropped off because tennis popularity went down. But there seems to be a lot of people who wanted to reserve the courts all times of the day, and the rec department had a wonderful, simple system, basically saying, tell us if you want to reserve a court, give us the $5, and the rec department has its own payment system, and it seemed to work swimmingly. I mean, there was just a large number of people who wanted to use the Grove Street tennis courts and also the Winbrook tennis courts. And this would go through all the tennis courts in town. Once again, Belmont meeting came up to the edge and couldn't get themselves to vote for it, so they're just going to wait a week because there's going to be a tennis summit soon, and that has to do with going back to the Community Preservation Committee, and that was the promise by the town to increase courts over at the Winbrook for the high school tennis team. As you know, under the new project is the new high school, middle school project. They had to take away one athletic program. It could have either been they could have taken away a field, or they could have taken away the tennis courts. That was decided that the tennis courts should go somewhere else. It's not unusual for other towns to have tennis courts outside of their schools. I believe half the Middlesex League does that. So it's not unusual, and they decided that the Winbrook is close enough and there's courts. Let's put another court in. Well, it's now just now it's where do you put it? Are you too close to Joey's Park? Can we put it further into the field? But that goes into an area that was used and used and protected almost by the youth soccer league. So they came out and said, here are the three options, and let's wait. so once again, and that's going to be that meeting will be hooked up with the reservation meeting. I believe for next week there's going to be a sort of tennis court summit, and
One of
we'll
the
see that.
paths, one of the paths the town appears to be going down is, in order to make sure that courts are available to the public, that tennis lessons will be directed towards
Towards PQ
specific
Park,
courts.
because that has to do with that
Right.
during the reservation, they looked at where people were reserving. A lot over at Grove Street, a lot over at Winbrook, not a lot over at PQ. And they said, look, people shouldn't be making money. It's one of those things off of a public court. But if you come to the town and say, look, I want to give an hour's worth of lessons. Okay, you pay a fee and we'll send you over to PQ Park because that's the least used. And so we'll have more use over there and free up courts in Belmont and the rest of Belmont. So they're thinking now the big issue that they have is, should we have one court reserved or two courts reserved? What time should be, what time should they be open? We don't want to open up courts at 6 a.m. Residents probably wouldn't like to hear those tennis balls going.
Sure.
Almost as bad as those gas-driven leaf blowers. So.
Okay. One last thing, the Chenery courts will be back.
Yes, they are
with the new school.
That's right. With the new school, they'll be there. As you know, the tennis courts were turned out to be the perfect place for for added classrooms through modules that were bought. Those modulars actually are very, very popular with teachers, so they're going to lose that. But there's going to be less students at the Chenery when it becomes a 5th and 6th grade school.
Sure. That's great. Thanks for bringing us up to date.
I should say 4th, 5th, and 6th grade.
Okay. Thanks for bringing us up to date. We've been speaking with Franklin Tucker, the editor and publisher of the Belmontonian, Belmont's online source for hyperlocal news. You've been watching News Now, the Belmont Journal's daily update on what's going on in the community of Belmont. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Roger Colton. I'll talk with you again next time.